We're back again with the Honda S2000, and there's one thing we didn't really cover in our last video. It's that this thing loves to rev. In fact, it'll rev to 8,200 RPM. You know, fewer and fewer cars these days are putting the red line that high up on the tach. In fact, we've been so focused on the death of manual transmissions that we haven't even looked around to notice that there are 0 cars under $100,000 that will rev that high today. And I would argue that that is just as important to driver engagement as just rowing your own gears. Back in the day, high RPMs could be found on even the most basic kind of economy sedan you can find, like this Toyota Corolla XRS. And I know it looks like the most boring form of transportation imaginable, but trust me, it's not. So what the hell happened? Anyway, Nik's here to tell us what's up.
Well, we've got these 2 cars and a beautiful empty road, so why don't we show you? In the pantheon of cars that rev high, maybe none is more well known than the Honda S2000. Now this is an AP2, which means it revs to only 8,000 RPMs. But that's nothing. The AP1 used to rev to 9. Now why did the old car rev higher than the new car? Well, that's kind of the whole story actually. And the story starts with, why should engines rev high in the first place?
High RPM engines weren't just put in cars for the sound. It's how these lightweight cars made horsepower. See, horsepower is equal to torque times RPM over a constant. That constant is determined by what measurements you're using. So if we're talking pound-feet and horsepower, the constant is 5252.
And there's kind of a golden rule. Let's say you have a 2-liter engine and it's naturally aspirated. The most power you're ever really going to make out of it is about 200 horsepower. And that tracks pretty well across different engine sizes. If it's a 1.5, it can make 150. That's a pretty spicy 1.5 liter. If it's a 5 liter, maybe it'll make 500 horsepower. This engine, 2.2 liters, makes 237 horsepower, more than that golden rule. How do you achieve that? With revs!
The S2000 makes its peak horsepower at 8,200 RPM, which, if you've been paying attention, is the red line. So that means to get all 237 ponies, you gotta rev this thing all the way out. I've never hit the rev limiter in any other car like I do in an AP2, because most other cars give you all they've got before that point.
See, once you get over the magical RPM of 5,252 RPMs, the horsepower and the torque curves cross. And that means even if the torque starts to fall off, the horsepower will still continue to go up and up and up. So that's why you could take a relatively small motor and make a whole bunch of horsepower out of it. There are some trade-offs, however, and that brings us back to the AP1 versus the AP2. So this engine, 2.2 liters, making 237 horsepower, only makes 162 foot-pounds of torque. And that means if you're driving along at 35 miles per hour at 2,500 RPMs, which is not that low for a lot of engines, and I floor it, nothing happens. There's 42, finally there's 50, 57, okay, you get the point. So there's nothing on the bottom end. And if it's that bad on the 2.2 liter AP2, think about how bad it was on the 2 liter AP1. Certain markets, Americans, expect a little bit more low-end oomph from their cars. So the 2.2 was released in the AP2 for the American market to make it more drivable in regular city, day-to-day, stoplight to stoplight driving. And that's all well and good, but we lost 1,000 RPMs at the top. You know, from a performance driving standpoint too, having the revs up that high with high compression really does give you a lot of control over the car. When you're going through some S-turns like that, it just gives it this crispness that you really don't get when you're at 4,000, 5,000 RPM, even 6,000 RPM. Yeah, it makes it really rewarding to drive.
While the S2000 is a unique gem of a car, the high-revving four-cylinder isn't what made it stand out. In the early 2000s, you could get 8,000 RPMs in a Civic, an Integra, even in a Corolla.
XRS was a really unique car because from every angle, this just looks like a 2005 Corolla. Until you look under the hood. This has a Toyota 2ZZ engine. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because you've looked under the hood of a Lotus Elise or Exige. It's the same exact motor, and it revs to 8,200 RPMs or thereabouts.
With a head designed by Yamaha, just like all of Toyota's best engines, it's basically a four-door Celica GTS.
Just the fact that an engine like that went into a 2005 Corolla makes this car just bananas. It shouldn't exist. Why does it exist? Who is this car for? But the fact that it's just so bizarre that such a high-performance, high-revving, exciting engine went into a car like this, a commuter car, an inexpensive car, a car designed for people who don't like cars, it turns it into something that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's special, it's interesting, it's unique, it's different.
In an effort to keep things cheap, a lot of Toyotas of this era share parts. This 6-speed transmission is based off the design they started using in the mid-80s. And because the 1ZZ and 2ZZ engines are so similar, the higher revving engine basically just fit in here with no issue. But having this engine in a 4-door sedan, as opposed to a sports car, is a much different driving experience.
Is this a sports car? Maybe not. It doesn't handle like the S2000 we have. It handles pretty much like a Corolla. But when you have a rev-happy engine like that with a 6-speed manual transmission, you can have fun at just about anything. One of my favorite little details on this car is the exhaust. And not because it's anything special, in fact, quite the opposite. If you look at the exhaust pipe on this car, it looks exactly like your average, mundane, everyday Toyota Corolla exhaust. But then when you hear this thing rev out, it is anything but mundane and everyday. So let's talk some more about this engine. The Toyota 2ZZ is a 1.8 liter engine that makes 170 horsepower. That's more horsepower than a brand new Corolla, and it weighs about 500 pounds less. So you get some pretty respectable performance out of this for something that is such an old car that was never really meant to be all that fast. The problem is that while it makes a respectable 170 horsepower, it makes 127 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah.
The reason we lost high-revving engines is the same reason we lose a lot of things in the car market: efficiency. The trouble with an engine with a wide RPM range is that as the engine turns faster and faster, the valves are open for less time. So when you need the air the most, you have the least amount of time to get air into and out of the cylinder. If you optimize the cam profile for high revs, the car is harsh and choppy at low RPM. And if you optimize it for normal driving, the engine can't move enough air at the top end to keep producing torque. For many manufacturers, the way around this was variable valve timing. Honda's VTEC, Toyota's VVTi, even Koenigsegg's free valve are all technically ways to optimize airflow in and out of the combustion chamber across a wider range of RPM. But the easiest way to get air to go where you want is to give it a little push.
I'm gonna grab turb ski, line it up. Yeah, that's gonna be nice, perfect. Just to snug it.
Normally that would hurt, but thanks to today's sponsor, I'm unscathed. And that's because
I'm wearing my Brunt boots.
thanks to Brunt, I now have comfortable work boots that are broken in right out the box. They've got comfortable cushion and support, breathable materials, and Brunt's very own signature cushion footbed. They're also water resistant, oil resistant, and super durable. If your project car has you feeling in the dumps and you want to kick it, you can. Unscathed. And the best thing is, it's great value for how much boot you get. If you're looking for a new work boot, make sure to get some Brunts by using our $10 off coupon from your first purchase. And if you don't like them, just send them back. I doubt you're gonna send them back though, you're gonna love them.
Every nameplate that used to be able to rev to the moon without a NASA-sized budget is now using forced induction. The Civic, the Corolla, the M3, all of them had high-revving NA motors that have been replaced with turbos. The other big factor here is cost. At first glance, you might think that a turbocharged engine would be the more expensive option. But to make similar power without forced induction, the entire rotating assembly needs to be stiff enough and light enough to handle the faster speeds. A valve train needs to be able to move fast enough, and everything needs to be built to incredibly high tolerances of balance and precision. So, despite forced induction giving us some crazy fun cars, it's also the reason we've gone away from attainable, high-revving engines like these.
Okay, so I understand that turbos are more efficient, you can make a lot of power, but clearly we have lost something here.
Yeah, turbos are great. Turbos make really fun to drive cars in their own unique way, but there's something about an NA engine revving out to 8+ that just really gives the car a whole bunch of soul that we just don't have now.
Yeah, and especially in a small car too, because like, yeah, you can get a Corvette that will rev that high for, again, over 100 grand, but there's something about like an economy car, just like a basic thing that has this incredible mechanical ability that I just really personally miss. And again, like I said before, stick shifts, great. Who doesn't love manual transmission? But when a car can make the kind of sounds that these can make, you really appreciate the mechanical complexity that's going on there and just how much work has gone into making it sing like that.
Yeah, it's a different type of engineering. To get the piston speeds high enough to run at 9,000 RPMs, the rods, the wrist pins, all that stuff has to be engineered to a really, really high level.
Yeah, and again, not to belabor a point, but to do all that engineering work in a Toyota Corolla.
That's my favorite part about it.
I know,
It's a
just so
silly vehicle
ridiculous.
for silly people.
And yeah, like they still make the GR Corolla. Like that is an amazing car. It is really just like the modern hot hatch that it should be, but it doesn't sound like that. And for a car to look like this and to have that engine in it, the Yamaha Touch, like, I don't know, you can't beat it.
Can't beat it. So which one are you driving?
Well, this one.
The thing though, is I got the key.